And right here is a video to a crash course video on Marsha P. Johnson and the Stonewall Uprising. STAR. Now, STAR stands for Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, and this was the fund that Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera started. And it was founded to fill that gap that I mentioned before for transgender youth who weren't receiving the help that other gay youth were receiving from those activists. So they started the Star House, which just started off first as a trailer where they would, provide some housing for gay kids who were on the street, trans kids who were on the street, and, give them food and give them a place to sleep for the night. And this place, was often raided, though. They would, it would end up getting reported and people would tow away the trailer with people still sleeping inside it. So they eventually got a building on 213 2nd Avenue, and that became the Star House. And what is interesting is actually Sylvia and Marsha B. Johnson kept it running by basically doing sex work, and, a lot of the money they got went into keeping that up, which I think that's pretty amazing that these people weren't even living, the most ideal lives themselves. They were already struggling to get by, but they, cared so much about other people, and they cared so much about children and their future that they would continue doing sex work and giving that money to helping them. And they even were trying to open up a place on top of that to help children learn to read. And the Star House became the first LGBTQ youth center in America, the first led by trans women of color, and the first by trans sex workers. So later, life and death. Marsha P. Johnson toured with Hot Peaches, which was a drag show, and she also collaborated with Andy Warhol and some other famous people. And here too, paintings he did of Marsha P. Johnson. She contracted HIV in 1990, although she didn't reveal this until very soon before her death in 1992. And she was a member of ACT UP and was an activist for people with HIV and tried to normalize it. She was found dead in the Hudson River July 6th in 1992, and the circumstances are still very much unclear. It was, most people essentially thought it was a suicide, and Marsha had been to a mental hospital several times in her life, although many people say it just, and her friends mostly said it doesn't seem like her. She was just such a bright person who was doing so much, and that didn't seem like something she would do. So the case was closed for a while, but it got opened back up recently, semi-recently. So I think that's interesting, people have, some different views on her, because she did have mental health struggles, and I think that really makes sense. I mean, she was never able to live a stable and secure life. And I also think it's very interesting that she was a sex worker and she had to deal with all of that while also being someone who had been sexually assaulted in her youth. And she must have had lots of trauma from that and from the outside world, but she just kept doing, and she gave so much of the little she had to help other people. So now there is a monument in Christopher Park for her, as you can see in that picture, and I think that's very cool. What they did is they made it so she has a tiara on her head, but people can weave real flowers into it because she wore flower crowns, and I think that's very cool. Although this wasn't put up by the government, it was put up by activists and artists who thought she deserved it. And right now, trans people have an extremely high suicide rates, and also homicide rates, especially Black trans women. In 2020, there was 6 Black trans women who died in a span of 9 days, and people refer to it as the pandemic within a pandemic. So I think it's very important that we keep talking about trans people, and we keep paying attention. A lot of their rights right now are also being taken and stomped on by different state laws. And even a gay marriage wasn't a human right until 2015. So it's really important that we keep pushing and we listen to trans people and we make it so their lives are more livable. And here are my sources. And here are just some pictures of what I thought were very, very nice. Thank you.